Hey everybody, this is the recap for episode 3 of Alone season 11. A lot went on in this episode, so bear with me. Okay, so it opens up with Isaiah. Isaiah found a gas can on day 1, and he uses it for a pea pot, so he doesn't have to walk outside in the middle of the night in the cold, which is pretty smart. But I probably would have washed that thing out real good and used it to hold water and just peed outside. He's talking about how cold it already is and how the wind chill will get to you, and how it's uncomfortable. He's saying that it's hard for him to ignore the need for a shelter because of that, because he knows winter's coming, and he sees the leaves changing, and he just knows that he needs a shelter, something that can withstand the cold. And he's saying that he's going to build a super shelter. He starts digging out. It looked like 2 sides of a bank on a ditch. I hope it's not a ditch, because that's just that funnels rainfall. So it looks like he might be doing some kind of a dugout shelter. I'm not sure yet. A dugout shelter is a smart idea because an earthen shelter helps regulate the temperature inside the shelter, and it helps keep the heat that you're putting off from your fire inside the shelter, especially if you line the walls with maybe stones or something like that to reflect that heat. It will be drastically warmer inside the shelter than it will be outside, and it'll help hold that heat in because it's basically sealed off. And while he's working on his shelter, we hear a actually heartbreaking story about his brother's death, and that's a terrible thing. They said his brother was killed by a distracted driver, and he goes into more detail than that, of course, but it's a terrible thing, and I'm sorry to hear that. So then it goes to Dub. Dub is making a net. He said it's sloppy, but I mean, to be completely honest with you, Dub, as the great Will Willis said, looks are only second to performance. So as long as it works, it don't matter. He says people are probably going to make fun of his net, but don't worry about what they say. They wasn't there. Most of them probably can't even make a gill net, so don't worry too much about it. He's saying that he's delirious because of his lack of food. I don't know if he's talking about this, but at a certain point when you haven't had any kind of substantial food, just berries, all you think about is food. That's all you can think about. I have to eat. I want something to eat. I need to find something to eat. I gotta eat food. And it kind of can crowd your mind. If you can't push that away, it can really get on your nerves. So I don't know if that's what he's talking about, but it does get to that point. He says that he spent a lot of time making his shelter semi-safe from grizzly bear attacks. But let me clear my throat so I can do some acting here. You hear it like this: I've spent a lot of time making my shelter semi-safe from grizzly bear attacks, because the edit guy didn't really find that one little thing. It could have probably went, I spent a lot of time making my shelter semi-safe, to make me feel more comfortable or something like that. But from grizzly bear attacks just sounded so much better, I guess. Says now it's time to focus on food. He's had lots of berries, but of course he needs protein, he needs fish. He talks about his experience as a fishing guide, which we have already seen in his casting videos. And he seems to be a pretty great fisherman. But at the same time, when you come to a new place, even if it's the same fish, they may act differently because of the different food sources and stuff around them. they may act a little differently. So you have to adapt to that. Even here, one river to the next, they all have the same fish in them, but it's a little different how you fish it. It's not extreme, but it's a little bit different how you fish for what fish in what river. Because sometimes the water's a little colder, sometimes the water's a little deeper, sometimes, you know, there's a whole slew of different things that go into it, but you just got to find that one little thing that pushes you over the edge to get those fish. So he sees some ducks coming in, but he doesn't get a shot. And that's probably a good thing, because you really don't want to risk your arrows, especially shooting in the air over the river. Because if you shoot, you know, if you shoot down, even if it's in the water, sorry about the snort, even if it's in the water, you may have a chance to get that arrow. So you don't want to shoot up in the air. I know, especially on season 11, you saw a lot of us taking shots in the air, in the trees at these grouse, and I mean that's risky. You know, at a certain point though, you don't think about that. You think there's a bird and I'm going to eat that. So you try. But shooting, especially over the river, if you're shooting, you know, I don't want to say that it's okay to shoot over land, because those arrows, if it misses and it doesn't hit a limb, they can go for a long time, especially because they're going up and they're steady moving forward, and then they're coming down, steady moving forward. And sometimes they land straight up, sometimes they scoop up other stuff, some of them might get hung in the top of a tree, you know. So just if you can wait until you see something on the ground. All right, just pro tip: if you can, wait until something's on the ground. If you know for a fact you can hit it, good job. If you have the slightest little bit of doubt, wait till it's on the ground. You don't want to lose those arrows. You only get 9. He sees something moving in the river. This is while he's trying to fish, but he sees something moving in the river, and it's coming down, and it's another duck. And it looks like he took a shot at a few ducks, but then the pesky commercials came back, and as soon as all that was over, sure enough, he took a shot at a few ducks and he missed. You know, that happens. He said that he can't believe he missed. He should have waited. He should have just shot the one duck instead of waiting for the 2, but that's the gamble of the game, you know. But he said that he missed, and it was 10 or less yards that he missed at. Now, in saying that, 10 or less yards, sometimes that arrow doesn't have enough time to straighten up. And what I mean by that is arrows bend. Arrows come, this is a wooden arrow. Arrows come off the bow doing this, and it takes them a second to straighten up and fly straight. So if it's coming off and it's doing that number right there, then I mean, even if it just misses by this much, it missed. So it's not that it was a poor shot, it may have just been up too close. Everybody's guilty of it. Full draw, release, whatever, and you put all of that power into that arrow and it's doing this, going down through there. Maybe if he would have just done a half draw, you know, or just plucked at it a little bit, I don't know. Maybe that would have helped. Maybe it wouldn't have been so much power. Maybe it could have straightened up a little faster, but it does take time for those arrows to straighten up, so that happens too. But since he misses, now he's in panic mode, because his arrow, I think he might have said it's his last or close to last flu arrow, is in the water, and he's thinking he's got to get that. And in these temperatures, I don't know what the temperature was that day, so I can't really talk too much on it. But in these temperatures, it's already cold there. It shows 41 during the day, 38 in the morning. So it's already cold. And he gets into the water. I think they said the water was 51 degrees. But hypothermia can set in. Hypothermia can set in those temperatures. So it's another, got to be cautious. He took his clothes off, all but his underwear, which is great. That way he could put dry clothes back on. Obviously, he didn't get hypothermic, or it would have been in the episode. But it's just, it's risky. So if you're going to do something like that, think about maybe I got to dry off all the way. I got to get my body warm. because you don't want to be hypothermic. The last thing you want to do is be hypothermic in a survival situation. Even in the cold and you're working, you're supposed to wait. You don't want to sweat because right now it's hot. It's hot in here. I've got the air going. Sorry if you can hear that, but it's hot in here and I'm sweating. And so what will happen is my sweat will evaporate because of the heat and help cool me off. In the cold, your sweat doesn't evaporate. It sits on your skin and it becomes cold. And it's water. What does water do? Water freezes. So it's making you even colder. So you're supposed to, even when you're working, stop, take a layer off, cool off for a second, put your layer back on, start working again, because you don't want to sweat. Hypothermia is real, and in this situation, he could have become hypothermic very easily. Obviously, he didn't, so that's great. He did take precautionary measures. He did take his clothes off before he got in there. I don't know if he took his underwear off when he got back out, but Dub, if you're watching this, if you took your underwear when you got back up, took your underwear off when you got back out, let us know. But he did put on dry clothes, which is great. So that helped. That helped dry him and helped warm him. He said it was just a bad decision to wait for the ducks, to try to get 2 at one time. It's not really a bad decision. Like I said before, that's the gamble of the game. You can either throw all the dice and come home, with the big victory, or you can throw 1 dice at a time and just hope each time that it happens for you, but it might not, So then it cuts to Dusty. Dusty is building a table to work on, which is awesome because everybody knows that working on the ground sucks, especially when you're hungry and you're tired. Working on the ground sucks. So building a raised platform, it looked like it was about just over his belly high, maybe arm bent high, which is great. Great little work. I usually, if I'm going to build a work table or a workstation, I usually try to go for my waist height or just below my waist height so that I can relax my arms down. That's just another pro tip. But he built a nice table to work from. And he hears a squirrel, and so he grabs his bow and he goes to get this squirrel, and he misses the first shot, but he nails it on the second one. I think he says right in the head, but yes, right in the head. Anyways, it looked like when the camera was drawn on his arrow, or when his arrow was drawn on the camera, I'm sorry, it looked like both shots were 2 different kinds of broadheads. So I'm wondering if he brought any blunts or judos with him, because I saw a 2-blade broadhead, and like a traditional broadhead, and a 3-blade broadhead. So I'm wondering if he even brought any blunt tips. But it was a good shot on the squirrel. And then he said, in Dusty's soup kitchen, we have another furry butt. This guy's awesome. He said his belly's been hurt, and since that morning, and he thinks it's just because he's hungry, and that does happen. Hunger pains are real. It's pangs, not pain, but whatever. They are real. You do start getting like some cramping. But most of the time, I would say that it's probably another underlying cause, because I'm pretty sure he's been eating berries and squirrels and stuff. So it may be another underlying cause, and I hope it doesn't affect him too much. He may have been eating too many berries, and the acids and stuff like that in them may cause some cramping, some bloating. He shows how to skin a squirrel the fast way, what we call the fast way. We call it, he called it shirt and breeches, we call it shirt and pants down here, but you basically cut in and just pull them apart. It's super easy, super fast, very efficient way to clean a squirrel. He said he hasn't gotten any fish since he's been there, but he says he still feels like he's doing good. he seems like he's doing good, and you know, it is what it is with the fishing. Sometimes you catch them, sometimes you don't. The fish have to be there. It's called fishing, not catching. But he goes to make a needle from a fish hook, and he uses that to sew one of the squirrels up as a hacky sack, the squirrely sack, as he calls it. And then he kicks it. He said, "I gotta do it," and he kicks it. It was perfect, you know. And then it goes to Michela. So when it shows Michela, she is in a full grassy ghillie suit, which is great, and she's making duck calls trying to get the ducks. Even though she's in all this gear and stuff, though, she winds up scaring the ducks away, maybe called too much, or maybe just moved that one little bit, you know, whatever it was. They're kind of spooky, and they just fly off. But it's still awesome that she had a ghillie suit. She talks about not having had any protein yet. She says she's moved the gill net around, but no luck thus far. She talks about how the Cree people were nomadic, which means they would, you know, travel from place to place in search of food, wherever they basically follow their food source. And so it would probably go from inland in the winter to coast during the summer to inland in the winter, something like that. That's about the way those work. She talks about the treaties and how they forced the Cree to settle on reservations, which were not great plots of land. And that's a terrible part of human history. Hopefully, instead of repeating it this time, we'll learn from it. And it's something that really should be undone. It's, you know, it is what it is. While she's picking berries, she finds some burdock, Arctic burdock, whatever they call it. She finds some burdock. We have greater burdock here, and she uses a digging stick to dig that up. So she ends up with a good handful of this stuff. She talks about how she has learned the different plants while she was growing up, and spent years studying them, and you know how they can feed her, how they can heal her, stuff like that. She also says she always liked having her hands in the mud, and that's just, to me, that's a way to get closer to nature. Even when we garden here, we don't wear gloves because you want to put your hands in the dirt. There's just something about it. There's something almost religious about it. There's no other way to say it. You have to put your hands in the dirt. You have to feel the dirt. And if you're not feeling the dirt, then really it's not worth it. So she ends up with a nice handful of burdock root to cook up. And at first that might be a little much. I would probably just eat a little bit and save some for later, eat a little bit, save some for later, because it's a lot. Even though it's small roots, that's a lot. And then it cuts back to Peter. Peter is building what I call a HOBO hand line. It's a fishing reel. But what Peter really needs is the HOBO Pro hand line fishing reel, because it actually reels. I'll have these up pretty soon on my Etsy shop, hopefully very soon. But just keep an eye out for that if you guys want to check out the handline reels. They're great. He starts working on a fishing lure, and it's I think it's a pretty neat way that he's putting that fishing lure together, and when he finishes it, it actually looks like a really awesome lure. But he starts while he's working on the gill net, he's talking about he will be building while he's working on his fishing lure, I'm sorry, jump ahead, he'll start working on his gill net either that day or the next day. And he said he just needs that one fish, you know. But building the gill net, the sooner the better, you know. If you wait too long, then you don't have that gill net in the water long enough before it starts icing up, and he missed out on a lot of good food. He said so far he's had nothing but failures. I think that was him just getting into his head. That happens, you know. You just need to focus on the small victories. You know, first of all, you're all alone. Yeah, that's a victory in and of itself. Out of countless of thousands of people that applied for this show, you were one of the 10 people that made it all the way. You know, so victory right there. He says he's only eaten berries the whole time he's been there, and that's tough too. I remember for me, I think it was 6 or 7 days before I had any protein, and just minuscule amounts of berries, nothing substantial, you know. And it really messes with your head because you go out there and you're thinking, oh man, I'm going to catch a fish, probably my second day, and then, you know, I'm going to be shooting squirrels and stuff like that. And then you get out there, and the one thing that you're able to kill is a blueberry. So, and they're easy to catch too, believe it or not. He's using treble hooks on his lures, and for those of you that don't understand or know the rules of the game, one treble hook counts as 3 hooks. So 3 hooks for a treble hook, 1 hook for, you know, a regular hook. But he's using treble hooks, so that's 3 hooks. But he's using 2 of them. You're only allowed 25 fishing hooks, so he's using 2 treble hooks. That's another risk right there, because yeah, the more hooks, the more easily it's going to catch that fish. More points for it to grab. But using 2 of them, if you snag something in that river and you break that line, that's what, a quarter of the 25 fishing hooks, and so that's a big risk. He said he's very confident in his fishing abilities. We saw that in his casting tapes. He said he's 100% confident. He said it's one of his best survival skills. He just needs to catch that one, you know. It says he's lost 11 pounds since day 1. He says that he feels like he's lost about 5 pounds, and that's a pretty crazy thing. By our first med check, I didn't think I lost that much weight, and when I got out, I found out how much weight I lost by our first med check, and it was ridiculous. He talks about the emotions that come with a solo survival situation like this, and just being in isolation, you know. And he says he takes it as a good thing. He says it makes you feel, and he might not have felt enough before. And I'm sorry, I didn't want to change his words. And that's true. That's a very big comment to make. He talks about his past and how he puts his emotions away. And I was a big guy that said the same thing, you know. I always said I could turn my emotions off. And turning them off just meant swallowing. And eventually they just build up, and once you're out there by yourself, they have a chance to overflow. But being out there, I realized it was a terrible thing. I don't do that anymore. He spends a little time fishing and catches a nice pike. I mean, everybody's catching these nice giant pikes. And there's another victory. That's the win, you know. He's going to make some soup and set some lines with bait it with a little bit of the fish, and hopefully he'll have more fish the next day. He said if he could get 1 fish a day, 1 fish like that a day, he would be good forever. So then it cuts back to Dub again, and he says it's a damn good day for some food, and I caught myself thinking, I hope he has a fish in his net. And I'm sorry, I'll write this as I watch the episode, so if it's kind of redundant or whatever, caught myself thinking, man, he said that, and I was like, man, I hope he's got a fish down there in his gill net. That would perk him up. And I noticed, and I like how he was putting his archery glove on, his finger glove, because you never want to go anywhere without your bow. You never know what's going to come out. There may be a fish in the net, but there may be a beaver right beside it up on the bank, or right there in the water or something, So always have your bow and your archery equipment ready. So I liked seeing him put that glove on before he did anything else. He was putting the glove on. He was going to go with his bow. And so that's a smart move right there, though. He talks about how frustrating it is to not have caught a fish by this point. And trust me, I know that feeling. It's horrible. He sees a whiskey jack on the pole at his gill net. And he said that the whiskey jack sees something he likes in the net. So he gets closer to the net and he sees it too. It's a fish head. So awesome, he got a fish, and it's another big pike. Everybody's catching pikes. He said he's challenging White to a big pike contest. And they were close. I bet he gets an even bigger one. He said that he'd take a pike like that over a duck any day, and he's right. I would too. He talks about how this show isn't 10 people competing against each other. A lot of contestants have said that. And you can see that too if you could only be there during the orientation and stuff like that. These guys, they're not competing with you. They actually try to help you. If you're lacking on a skill or something, or you want to learn something new and somebody else has some other knowledge, they will tell you. Nobody wants you to go hungry, nobody wants you to go cold, but it's not 10 people facing against each other, it's 10 people facing themselves. He says that, let me see, he says it's just him competing against him, and he's wondering, can he take it? Is he going to be the last one to tap out, or what? And it's another little deep thought right there. And that's something every one of us, like I said, every one of us has asked ourselves, can we make it? How much farther can I go? At some point you say, this is getting ridiculous, and right now I'm just cold and hungry, and how much farther can I go? He said his plan is to put his food in his body. He's seen past contestants, everybody tries to smoke the fish and stuff, and eventually a marten gets it, or some other animal decides they want that food worse than you do. And that's a good thing, putting that food in your body. I went through the same process. I was like, every bit of food that I get, I will eat. I will consume that food. That way I have that nutrients in my body. I will drink as much water as I can. That way I have that fluid in my body. But after a while, when the birds and stuff started getting a little bit more scarce, I started drying meat because I was rationing at that point. And it got to the point where I was rationing a little too little. But I'm interested to see how his plan's going to work out if he continues to do this. If he gets enough food every day, then I believe he'll continue to do that. But as soon as he starts getting more food than he can consume, he's either going to store it or it's going to be wasted. Also, on the opposite side of that, if food starts to diminish, he's going to start thinking, I'll eat this one fillet today, and I'll eat this one fillet tomorrow. So I'll dry this one. So, you see where I'm getting at. He did have a nice looking pot of fish though. So next is Isaiah again. And he's carrying timbers to make the corner post for his shelter. So I'm wondering if it's going to be a timber frame kind of shelter. I'm interested to see how his shelter goes. He's well on his way to building a super strong shelter. He actually tamped the dirt or packed the dirt around his post, and I'm pretty sure the way it looked like he was doing that in layers. He put some dirt and tamp it, put a little bit more dirt and tamp it, put a little bit more dirt and tamp it, so it's all packed down all the way to the bottom, and it looked like it was pretty deep in there, probably 1.5 feet, 2 foot deep in the ground, maybe. I'm not 1,000,000% sure, but the thing was over his head, and then he worked it down to just at the top of his head. So I think it was a good bit, a good depth for that, especially with it being tamped down. I have a fence out here, and there's no concrete in any of those 6x6s, and they're all just tamped, and they have stood there for a long time. So it's bound to be a sturdy foundation for him. Says he hasn't had any protein since day one, and that's a problem because he needs that protein and fat, because he's putting out so much energy on this shelter, cutting wood, carrying wood, digging a hole, standing the logs up, packing the dirt down. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to do that. And so if he's not putting anything back in, he's just burning that weight. And it does, believe it or not, when you're out there, it comes off a lot faster than it goes on. So it shows he's building a tripod to cut wood on. That's smart. It's a lot easier to cut wood. Same with the table. It's a lot easier to work off the ground than it is to work on the ground. So that's smart. When he stands his tripod up, he hears something. And you can really tell that his senses are getting sensitive already. It happens to everybody, but you can tell that they're already getting real sensitive because of the way he darts when he hears that. He focuses on it just immediately. He knows where it's at almost. So you can tell his senses are heightened. They're getting very sensitive. He is hearing everything around him. He's probably smelling a little bit more than what he used to. He might not realize it, but he probably is. He goes, he grabs his bow, he takes a shot at a squirrel, and you hear him yipping, and then the commercial, of course. Commercial cuts back, he got his squirrel. And he said that he needed to get his hat so he could look like the big game hunter holding the squirrel. He also says that that's his brother's hat, and I'm glad that you have that hat, Isaiah. I am. I'm glad that you have a keepsake like that. You know, I have my Pawpaw's fishing poles. I've got a couple other fishing poles from different people that have passed. A couple of knives, you know, and those mean more than, you know, a lot of stuff. Anyways, I'm glad that you're able to have that hat. So he cleans the squirrel, and then he says that he's going to use the arm of the squirrel that he hit with the arrow as bait. And I don't know if he's thinking it's because it's bruised or thinking because the bone's broken, but I would probably use a gut, like some intestines or something like that, before I used the arm of the squirrel, because that's meat. Believe it or not, you cook that thing up just right, and you could probably eat the bone too. So I probably wouldn't waste that, even though it's just a small morsel. I probably wouldn't waste it. That's just me, my opinion. As fishing bait, I probably would have used the intestines. Even a lot of people won't eat bruised meat. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just blood. You know what I'm saying? Out there, you can't do it obviously, but you can actually put bruised meat in the freezer, let it freeze for about a week, take it out and let it thaw out all the way, and it'll push that blood out. Out there it'll be a little bit more difficult, but it's blood. I would eat it. He talks about being outdoors and said God doesn't speak to you more when you're outdoors. It's just easier to hear it. And he said that he didn't go there to speak to God. He said he went there to hear his brother. And I'm sure at some point in his time there, he had the religious experience that he was looking for. He said he knows his brother's watching as well. And hold on to that, Isaiah. So he's using chopsticks. Chopsticks are probably the best cooking utensil that you can use in the bush. That's coming from a spoon carver. I carve a lot of spoons, forks, knives, or spreaders, not knives, but spreaders, all that good stuff. And chopsticks, I used chopsticks the whole time I was there. You know, I made one little spoon for one little thing, and I wound up throwing it away and not using it anymore. It got misplaced because chopsticks are the way to go. You know, you can stir your pot with them. You can pick the meat out with it. You can eat with them. Everything. They're highly efficient tools, cooking utensils for being in the bush like that. He talks about how they're trying to have another baby. They can't have another baby, and that's a hard thing right there too. Says that really the only way that they can have children is in vitro, if I pronounce that right, and that winning that money would be the only way to have another child. And I hope that's not the case. I hope that even if you didn't win, I hope you still have that opportunity. You know, children are a blessing, as you know. But winning the money, that would really help him out. After he eats the squirrel, he goes to check his fishing line, and there's another pike. Or I think that's his first pike, actually. So there's a pike, and that's another nice sized pike. Everybody's catching these decent sized pike. Then it cuts to Peter, and Peter's working on building a gill net now, and he's doing a pretty decent job. Looks like he's using the inner strands of the paracord, and there's a lot that goes into building these gill nets on this show. Some people just prefer, you know, we've seen a couple this season, just buy the gill net and throw it out there. But when you have paracords, you've got so much more cordage. Anyways, I can't remember the certain dimensions. It's like 12 feet long by X amount of meshes tall, you know, so you have to actually study into that, and the meshes have to be a certain diameter, or you know, width, whatever, but so there's a lot that goes into that. And thinking about it, anyways, there's a lot that goes into that, building that gill net. It's not just, you can't just tie knots in random places. You can't make it really small. It has to be a certain size. So there are regulations to it. But he says he put a lot of effort into the gill net, and it takes a good bit of effort. And you don't think standing there tying the same knot over and over and over again, just like the old cartoons eating corn, you start here and then you tie. Well, actually, you work your way back, but you understand what I'm saying. There's a lot of it's a lot harder. It's a lot more time consuming than you think. He said he's hoping this pays off. The next day, sure enough, there's a fish in his gill net, which is awesome. On top of the fish in his gill net, he catches, how many fish did he catch? He has a small pike on one of his set lines. His gill net has a pike in it. On top of those two fish, he catches a burbot. On his other set line, he catches, no, on his other two set lines, sorry, he catches two more pike. That is 5 fish. 5 fish at one time. That, correct me if I'm wrong. If you've made it this far in the video and I'm false, please let me know. That's the most fish ever caught at one time on a long. That's the most ever caught at one single time on a long. 5 fish. And I mean, even the small pike, however, it might have been that big, you know, I don't know, but even the small pike was a decent sized fish, you know, so there's 5 fish. So having 5 fish, there ain't no way you're going to eat that all at once, you know. That's what I was saying about Dub. Dub might not, if he catches a bunch more, whatever, he might have to think about storing that food. But So now he's got 5 fish. Peter's going to build us a TP smoker, which is a lot more efficient than a box smoker because of the way the TP shape, the smoke comes up, and it has to go through, it has to pass over your fish or your food, whatever. For the box shelter, it just fills up and it's leaking out everywhere. TP shelter really only leaks out the top, so it has to go up. So as long as your food is hanging up here, the smoke's going to go up. It says that for him to smoke that fish will probably take 2 days. That goes back to the video that I did on the time paradox of along what's there and what's shown. Because you see somebody smoking fish and it's like, I'm gonna put this fish in the smoker, and then the next scene they're like, hey, my fish is smoked, and they're eating it. Well, that took days. That's not something that you don't smoke it for an hour. Even people that smoke food on grills usually do it over a course of a long time. Now you're over a smoldering fire with smoke coming out of it. It takes longer, but if you want to check out that video, put a link, all that good stuff. He's thinking about how he's going to keep the fish from predators. He's thinking about how he's going to keep the scent down, not take it back to a shelter, because that would be a bad thing. And these predators have just an amazing sense of smell. So he's probably going to have to put it up high, or because that would be the easiest way to do it. If you tried to bury it, something's going to dig it up. So probably going to have to put it up high, either with a rope or build a platform. Probably bending 2 trees and hanging a rope, that might be the easiest way to do it if you can get some that are flexible enough and tall enough, but that'd be another story for another day. A good sized limb coming out with those black spruce, they really don't have the strongest limbs. You can grab them, even a limb, pretty decent size, you can grab it and basically break it off. It just shears off the side of it, so I'd hate to throw your fish up there and then the next day you come out and your fish, what's left of your fish is laying on the ground with a rope. Then it cuts to William. William made a nice little lure and caught a pike, pretty decent pike. He heads out first thing in the morning to check his snares, and sure enough, he has a rabbit. He talks about growing up with nature and how alive you feel when you're in nature, and it's true, especially if you've been in it and you enjoy it. There's just a whole other feeling that comes along with it. So like I said, he catches a rabbit in his first snare. It's a pretty decent sized rabbit. Hell. But he says it's enough for 2 meals. He talks about fishing and hunting and stuff being a major part of his life and the community's life. And he talks about the one giant garden, which means that the earth, the one giant garden, nature, will provide for you as long as you care for her. He makes what I call a fridge hole. He basically cuts in and makes an insulated hole in a bank to keep that rabbit cool, so that he can process it at a different time. And I'm just hoping that, it says that he can keep it there for 6 days or whatever. I'm hoping that he has time before then to process it and that no predator smells it or finds it, because they can just walk across and find it. So it cuts back to Michela. So Michela is working more on her shelter. She has weighed down the sides. I see dirt and pine boughs mixed in. Once that, if a little bit of rain hits that and packs it down, it'll become a brick. So that's going to keep rainwater shed off and not coming under a high spot as easy. And it's also going to cut the wind out from blowing under the tarp, because that'll drive you crazy. So good job on that. She made a birch bark bucket, and it was a pretty decent sized bucket, and she's got her berries that she foraged in it. She was eating those. She's having her berry breakfast. She also ate the burdock root. She said it's pretty, you know, you can tell that it's astringent whenever she eats it. It's pretty sour. They even referenced, what was it? Rhubarb. They referenced rhubarb. I like rhubarb, so I might like it, but maybe she could have baked it instead, and maybe it would have knocked some of the flavor or some of the taste down. I don't know. But she boiled it and she drank it. She says now that she's got a full belly, she's going to go check her gill net, and she hopes that she gets a fish soon. When she gets to her gill net, there's another nice pike. Everybody's catching these huge fish. And while she's cleaning that, she talks about how her sight feels familiar to her, home-like she's been there before. She said, and she makes a good point that all of our ancestors, whether it's my ancestors or your ancestors, they all come from an indigenous group of people at one point in history or another. So we're all connected to the land like that. If you really want to find your roots, go find some roots, you know. While she's cleaning that fish, she starts to feel like she's got an upset stomach, and starts to feel sick, like she's going to throw up. And sure enough, she does throw up, and she throws up this red color. I think the red color is just from the cranberries. That happens. But I think the thing that caused her to throw up was she ate a good portion. I don't know if she ate it all. It doesn't show that she ate it all. Your mind kind of puts it together and insinuates for you that she ate it all. I don't know if she ate all of it, but I'm guessing that she ate a pretty good portion of it, and that's what made her sick. Now, any wild edible, if you're not used to eating wild edibles, it's good to maybe take it slow at first, enjoy just a little bit of it, and then, you know, enjoy a little bit more at a later point in time. Again, when you're hungry and you're out there, you're like, I'm gonna eat this. That's just all there is to it. You don't think nothing about it. But at the same time, I think that directly caused her stomach to be upset. She quickly, you know, regains herself, or whatever you want to call it, and she shows us how to process that pike. And she starts showing us, you know, step by step, and that really adds to, you know, she knows what she's talking about. You know, she says that she's going to go back to her shelter to make some soup out of the fish. The rule on every season, now this is a rule that they tell you, the rule on every season is that you have to have a cooking shelter or a cooking spot 100 yards away from your shelter. And that's to keep animals over there. You don't want animals in your shelter. I didn't do that. My cooking spot, my tripod on the beach was probably 20 yards from my shelter, maybe at max. And a lot of my meals were either cooked there or directly inside my shelter over my fire pit with another smaller tripod. But the reason that they want you to do that is to keep the animals, keep the smell of the food away from them. I wasn't too worried about that. I was honestly just hoping the bear would walk up. At that point, I was just trying to stick something, you know. All right, so then it cuts back to Peter. And Peter has started a ladder, so he is going to put his food in there. He's cutting notches into the poles to keep the rungs in place while he ties them, while he lashes them. He's using a saw. There's a few things here that I didn't like. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and say it. This was me sitting in my rocking chair, watching the show. I wasn't there. I'm not him. I didn't know what was going through his mind. You know, everybody, it's always different. You know, people talk shit. I'm not talking shit. This is my personal opinion about what I don't like about what he did. Okay, just go ahead and get that out of there. The guy's a genius. I ain't got no problem with him, but when you get into the state of mind where you're exhausted, hungry, your mind's going crazy from being alone, shit happens. So there's a few things I didn't like. First, he's using a saw to cut those notches. I don't know if he brought an axe. I don't remember if he brought an axe or not. But that's an axe job. To cut those notches, that's an axe job. You don't cut with a saw. Angles like that is really difficult. Secondly, I mean, you could, back to that, you could even use your knife and kind of baton it a little bit to get those notches out. Secondly, he's working off of his lap. Now, he's not sitting cross-legged, he's sitting on his feet, so his lap is tilted down. That's not stable, nowhere near stable. So every little movement, every time he cuts, that log is doing this. I don't care how you're holding it, the log's moving, and that's a recipe for disaster. Okay. Thirdly, no matter which way you're working, every other cut. So if you're cutting this way, then you're cutting towards you. You're cutting away from you. You're cutting towards you. You're cutting away from you, and that's cutting towards your abdomen because it's sitting on your lap, and that saw is like 36 inches long. That's a big long saw, and they don't play. Another video I'll put down there, I actually stabbed myself in the knee with my silky saw, and it took a long time for me to recover from that. Even though it was just the teeth going in, it was like 14 puncture wounds, and it took a long time for that to heal. Of course, it wasn't nothing like Cubby, but it took a long time for it to heal. So he's not thinking clearly, obviously, and he's going about it the wrong way, and the inevitable happens. It slips. It slips on the pull cut, and whenever it slips on the pull cut, he's pulling it towards him and not pushing it away. So when it slips on the pull cut, it comes off the log and goes across the log and gets him right in the hand. Now, it seems like he's a pretty tough guy. He just says, "Up, I'm bleeding." You know, I think he said it's a bleeder. He says, "I'm bleeding. I'm gonna go over here and wipe this off and put a Band-Aid on." That's what he does. You know, it's still gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt every time you move it, especially over the next 3 days or 4. It's gonna hurt every time you move it. But there's certain ways to use certain tools and certain things that need certain tools. Like I said, I'm not talking bad about the guy. I don't know what was going through his head. He was probably distracted by something, whether it's food or just, you know, your mental state, or I gotta hurry, you know. So I'm not talking bad about the guy by any means, but there's some things, me looking at it from an outside perspective, I saw that I didn't like, and I'm sure that going back, he probably says, if not the same exact thing, then really close to it. So he got the bleeding to stop. He puts a Band-Aid on it. And he talks about how his son would help him. Are you okay? Can I help you? You know, and said that his son is emotionally honest. Never heard that before. I like the way he said that. His son is open with his emotions. And Peter says that he is not open with his emotions. And I hope he's able to open up, you know. I hope he's able to show his emotions to his family and show his family that he feels like his emotions are okay. So he finishes his ladder, and he decides to check his lines again. And one of them had a fish on it, and you know, it got off. That happens. And the next one was empty, so on and so forth. The whole time he's checking his lines, he's talking about how he's worried about he is failing his family. It's in more words than that, but he's worried that he's failed his family, or he's failing his families. And he said that his emotions are taking over. He's gotten so far in his head now, and it's easy, so easy to do. He's gotten so far in his head now that he can't think about anything else. And he said that there's nothing he can do. Like I said, there's nothing he can do. His emotions are flooding his mind, and at that point, it's rough. After the commercial break, it shows him. He's sitting by the river. He's watching ducks on the water. He says he came out to test his survival skills, and he thinks they're good, and I think they're good too, my friend. 5 fish at one time. I mean, that's amazing. Nice lures. Anyways, I think they're great as well. He said he's got a warm shelter. Looks warm. He said he's got a good bed. Looks comfortable. He's got a mattress on it. He's got a belly full of fish. But he says his heart's swampy. He says that maybe he's emotionally weak. It's not that you're emotionally weak, it's that you have denied yourself those emotions for so long that once they've brewed, there's nothing you can really do about it. And it's amazing how nature and solitude can change you both mentally, make you think about things differently, and emotionally, make you feel things differently. He said he wasn't expecting that to happen to him, and nobody does. Nobody expects that. He said in 15 years of marriage that his wife has never seen him cry. And he confesses, I'm sorry, that he's cried every day since he got there. And he said he needs to be with his family, you know. He needs to fix those relationships before it's too late. Like I said, I'm just taking this out of context. He said it more words than that, but he needs to fix his relationships before it's too late. So he finally makes the call, and he taps out. And he taps out to go there and be with his family, both as a presence and emotionally, you know. He tells the crew that the only person that can defeat him is him. And I am going to have that put on a sign. And I'm going to have that hanging in this building as a reminder that the only person that can defeat you is you. You will break yourself down faster than anybody else ever could. Truer words have never been spoken. It's hard to open up at first whenever you've held those emotions in. This is coming from experience. Not to be, you know, all sob story and stuff, but it's hard to show those emotions when you've kept them buried for so long. But I hope that you're doing better with it. I hope that, you know, it's working out for you. Once you're able to start showing those emotions, it is a lot easier to let them go. It's a lot easier to be there in that moment with those emotions. It's a lot easier to understand them, to cope with them. It took a lot for me as well to learn that, and it took, you know, Dr. Jeff. It took a bunch of people. It took my wife. It took my kids. Everybody helping me through what I was going through whenever I came out of the woods. And I'm sure that your family and the resources that the show offers you, I'm sure that they will help you. You just have to let them. You know, you have to step back, you have to let go of the reins, and you have to let them do that for you. You have to be willing to open up. You have to be willing to talk to your son about how he's feeling, about how you're feeling, you know. You don't have to just focus on how someone else is feeling. You can focus on you as well. And the worst thing that you could do is put those away. And it took, like I said, it took a lot for me to understand that, a lot for me to learn that. It was a hard lesson taught. But now I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I hope to God that you don't have to worry about that anymore either, my friend. I hope that everything's going great for you. I hope that you're living a happy and full life now. And I mean, there's nothing else I can say. You know, you made the right call. You made the call to be with your family. That's where you needed to be. Money's great, victory's great, but your family's right there, you know. So, good job, my friend. You are an amazing survivalist, and you should have your own school. You should write a book, you know. I would have that book. If it was Survival by Peter, I would be reading that book. You know what I'm saying? So great job, great effort, and great decision, my friend. And everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one.